All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I believe this is episode 8, maybe 9. Don't quote me. It's getting to that point where I'm doing these episodes and they're just coming, and I'm just trying to do the work. But it's truly a privilege to be back here with you guys today. And I say this all the time. You're probably getting tired of me, but thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your feedback. I've been doing this podcast. I recently started the Coffee and Conversations monthly meeting for just conversation with many different experts and many different people. So I just thank you guys for following my work and following these places and these platforms to continue the conversation. So thank you. But you guys know I can talk. Without further ado, I met our guest here today in 2019 at a Nighted Review training, and I can't I can't speak highly enough about how much this is an honor and a privilege to be able to speak with them today. So, without further ado, I'm gonna have them introduce themselves.
Well, hello, Michael. I'm Elliott Hinkle, and it's great to be here with you today. My pronouns are they, them, and yeah, just excited to get to talk with you today.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're just gonna dive right into it. It's you know, I know we've been talking and connecting for a little bit over social media, so glad to have you here. Um, but I don't know if you had the opportunity to listen or see some of the things, but I tried to get a scope of the individual, then the expertise, because so many times, we have these conversations and we, as experts and professionals, we speak from our expertise a lot, you know, um, but it's also a story of how we got there, and I don't want to take away from the story of how you got there, and give back that power and uplift that, but also acknowledge, the professionalism and the expertise that you have gained throughout the years. Um, so if you feel comfortable, if you could tell us, when did your journey begin?
Mm. Yeah, it's a good question, I guess, of where to start. If I start from the beginning, I was born in Louisiana, and I don't remember much of it, obviously, because I was little. I think we were there until I was maybe 2 or 3, with my biological family. And then they moved us to Wyoming, and I grew up in Casper, Wyoming, and uh, got to be there for 19 years, but the early parts of my life were still with my biological family. Um, didn't have tons of money, and I think that was clear to me even as a small child that like my home life was not the same as what my peers in school's home lives were, or their family dynamics, and just the challenges at home. And so in Wyoming, when we first got there, we lived with another family, and then we moved into our own home. And pretty quickly into being there. One of my parents was a hoarder, so really had lots of possessions and items and had a hard time letting go of things, really. And so that pretty much grew really quickly. And that meant that by like middle school or so, I was really starting to live in a house that was a pretty dirty house. Trying to keep my room and my sister's room clean, but really familial struggles and tension, and one parent working and the other not, and not necessarily contributing to that sort of environment. Um, and so I remember middle school being kind of rough, or school in general. I didn't always feel very connected to other folks. Our families obviously weren't spending time together, and I wasn't doing sports. I was doing band. That was one of the things that was keeping me afloat, was friends in school with band, and just something fun to do. But then right around middle school, when I was like 15 or so, headed into the summer, I had some good friends in my middle school who I think I was finally able to kind of describe what my home life was. Obviously, I'd never invited anyone home. I'd gone to my friends' houses. So it's becoming clearer and clearer to me, oh, what they're doing at home with their families and what their house looks like is not what mine looks like, which is clean, and their parents have conversations with them, and they take them to sports, and they go on trips and all this stuff. And that was just not necessarily the life that I think my parents could give us, related to poverty, of course, but also just related to their own probably unaddressed like mental health challenges that come, I think, also from poverty or familial trauma. And so I remember telling one of my friends finally sort of where I was at, and my mental health was getting kind of worse and worse. And they sort of had kind of opened the door to, well, we know who we could call or talk to if you feel like you're not safe at home. So I'm one of those folks who is, I would assume, probably less common of, I kind of sought out care or really any way to not be in that circumstance, but not to the extent of wanting to run away either. I think I felt like I had built some community connections with other families that seemed like they might be willing to help take care of me or something. Um, so when I initially reached out to the child welfare system, or somebody else did, it was like through my middle school principal, and it all, took off really quickly once it happened. And I think I had a lot of nerves and fear around my parents being angry. What am I doing to my family? Am I tearing my family apart? But also, I feel internally like I'm being torn apart. And so I don't think I regret any of that. I think so much would needed to happen there, and I don't know that it was going to happen in the home. So I got taken into foster care. I think I spent about 8 or 9 days in like a lockdown facility, not because I had done anything wrong, which is its own trauma of kind of confusion of, oh, I asked for this and now I'm really being punished for this.
Yeah.
And had family, like familial or family, as I like to call it, friends who were family, um, who really looked out and made sure that once I was in care, they were still in connection with me and that they were advocating for me to get out of that facility, but also to get placed with their family. And that I really appreciated. I'm still connected to that family today. I got to spend the first like summer in care with them. And then I transitioned to like a regular community foster home. So a foster mom who was single, who I didn't know, but had done care before. She worked in juvenile probation work. And so she already had some of that background. But I think the benefit there too is that she wasn't disciplinary as if you might assume about a juvenile probation officer, but she also was enough structure and discipline that I think I needed at that time that I wasn't getting from my biological family and might have missed other places. So it meant that when I went into care, I started high school with a new whole situation and kind of got to do a reset. It was still tough. I wasn't very connected to other families or communities or friends, it felt like, but I also started to come into more and more of my own. So I felt like I was a person who knew everybody, but people didn't know me. So not popular, but around, but not as connected either as I probably could have been. Um, and appreciated therapy at that time in my life. But I also um, got really connected to a faith community. And at that time, it was really helpful. I didn't have that family that I felt like I needed, and so this sort of took that place. But over time, that community, I think, came with strings attached. Right. So what kind of person you're supposed to be in that sort of that particular Christian denomination's community. And for me, that meant that the feelings I was starting to really not be able to avoid around attraction, as at that time I was identifying as a girl and I was attracted to other women or girls. And I was, 15 or 16, and no one in the church really had understanding of that, let alone no one was affirming that. I wasn't really talking to them about it, but the few people where there was moments that it kind of came up or people wondered, tried to really squelch that as quickly as possible. So the challenge there was I felt like I had finally found a really loving community that loved like 95% of me, but this 5% that wasn't is entirely like part of the foundation. If there was a triangle, it was like the foundation nearly. And that was the one part that they couldn't really ride with. And so that sort of started to push me away from them. And by the time I was 19, I was getting ready to enter college, exit foster care. My birthday lands on September 1st. So it means that I started the school year every year, kind of around birthday and those things. So it meant I entered my senior year of high school as a 19-year-old who or no, I'm sorry, I was starting my freshman year of college as a 19-year-old who exited care and had just started conversion therapy with the church because they had found out I was seeing someone and weren't approving of it. So it was like this huge transition moment where the system finally is like, we're gonna step away, and at the worst time. But they didn't know that because
Mhm.
obviously they weren't endorsing that. I was really seeking out community that at the end of the day didn't have the capacity to love like all of who I am, at least not at that time. Um, and so that I would say is sort of the chapter at least of my growing up in Wyoming, because of conversion therapy, I got to finally figure out that no, nothing is wrong with me, but I can't be in this church, and I don't know if I can be in this community for a while. So that really encouraged me to apply for schools in the Pacific Northwest because I knew I had a scholarship that was covering undergrad and I could transfer once. So that scholarship was my ticket out. So I used that. I applied and I got into multiple universities in the Pacific Northwest, but Portland State University is where I went with because I took most of my credits. It was Portland. I knew I'd find support there. And I just was like really ready to kind of get out. And in my advocacy career at that time, I think I first got into any advocacy stuff around like 2011.
Mhm.
And that was also sort of an encouragement of like, at least if I leave here, there's still opportunities elsewhere. I don't need to stay here just to get those opportunities. So that's at least sort of the process of the beginning of my story up to moving to Portland and sort of navigating that first kind of push out of life.
Elliot, you spoke about some very significant things that
Yeah,
has
just a
happened in
few.
your life. Right, just a few. And some of these things would weigh a lot on a person's mental, you
Sure.
know. So my question, you spoke about being with family,
Mhm.
poverty being a huge deficit,
Right.
you know. And initially, if I heard it right, that poverty, that environment led to a little bit of dysfunctionality, you
Totally.
know.
Yeah.
Um, and this is a trend which we see now in foster
Mhm.
care, poverty
Totally.
being a root to neglect. And it's not really neglect, but that's
Right.
what we have the word for,
Right.
you know. Um, and then you spoke about, being removed and then placed in congregate care because,
Mhm.
which we see today. We ain't got
Right.
nowhere else to put you right now, so this is where you got to go.
Right.
But it's gonna be all right. No trauma is gonna happen. You good, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And mentally,
Mhm.
we in our head, because I've been there,
Yeah.
um, asking for help, and this is the help that I get. You got other people, and this is, I'm speaking just from the mindset
Mhm.
of the kid going into this place.
Mhm.
I ain't got no issues. These other kids in here tripping. Why am I here? Like, I asked for help. Y'all
Right.
got me in here
Right.
locked up. Like, I'm just robbed.
Yeah.
That was my mindset when they brought me. When I told them that I didn't want to go back home. You
Right.
know, so I can only imagine the mental state that you were in, and then further, when going to seek community, like many of us do,
Mhm.
seeking community,
Right.
seeking companionship within
Mhm.
people,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you were openly told,
Yeah.
but being told without being saying that, yeah, no, you tripping. That
Yeah.
we're not gonna accept that.
Right.
But here's something we're gonna help you out with. You know,
Right.
you
Right.
know. So my question, navigating through those significant things, and I know there's probably more in between, but
Sure.
those significant things, what was mental health like throughout that journey of just those phases of life?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was like tumultuous and rough. I think there was a level of there was like an awareness that things weren't great and simultaneously not enough knowledge yet to know like to sort of normalize it, but also to understand like what was going on, whether it be like emotionally, physically in my body, and also um why I would have whatever emotions or reactions I would have to anything that was going on. So my mental health, definitely by middle school, I think was pretty like dark, and high school was rough too. I navigated depression and anxiety and suicidal ideations, and I've kind of lived with those the rest of my life, but of course figured out much better ways to kind of cope and navigate that and to even understand it. Um, that it doesn't freak me out now and it doesn't intimidate me or even hearing it from other people. But I think at the time we were in a time period that it wasn't also talked about as much as it is now. So I don't
Mhm.
know that I felt like I could tell people without it being just like lots of worry and concern. So I didn't really share, but I internally felt like I don't think I'm supposed to be here. This is all really hard. I don't want to be here anymore. If I ended my life, would anyone actually care? No. Like those thoughts that I feel like sort of can feel cliche or whatever, but no one else is really interrupting those thoughts. So those are going to build. So you keep thinking those things because no other sign is telling you otherwise. And now when I do training around LGBTQ youth and adults supporting these young people and affirming their lives, things that I think about are that loving and affirming queer and trans youth is suicide prevention. And when I was a young person, I don't remember any adult ever asking me, how do you even identify? Or I probably wouldn't have even known what that question meant. They didn't ask, who do you want to go on dates with? Or who are you attracted to? Or who do you see your life with? Or how do you see yourself, even regardless of romantic attraction? There was never like a curiosity from adults that made it seem like there was any other option. And so I think I want that for young people to know like the possibilities are endless and you shouldn't feel like people are making you feel bad about whatever, especially is innately coming up for you. It's inside of you for a reason. Um, so I think not having that meant that my mental health was trying to survive a hard world that wasn't giving me the best messages that I should stick around or I should be who I am. The church was really especially hard in that regard of not only is what you're feeling wrong, but we can fix you. Needing to spend part of my adult life then learning there was nothing to fix, that I wasn't broken. I'd experienced harms for sure, but that my innate identity and sense of self was to be unpacked further, but that there wasn't something wrong with it. And so I think that impacted my mental health a lot, but I also feel really glad that for whatever reason I sought out therapy and I didn't feel afraid of that. And I felt like I could learn more and create an awareness that meant I could have the capacity to take care of myself or let other people help take care of me in ways that hadn't happened before. So it was rough. And I remember my 19th birthday probably being the worst because it was really when conversion therapy started, care had ended, and I just felt very alone. Like the person I was kind of interested in has been blocked from me, and I'm just sitting in my dorm room thinking, I can't even tell people that the church is making me do this because they'll either feel the same thing that the church feels, or will they even believe me?
Right.
Because it also felt so wild. So I think that was a period that it took a while to sort of come out of because
Mhm.
it didn't realize how much kind of harm it had created. But I will say foreshadowing wise that conversion therapy didn't work. I'm really glad because I'm very gay. And it didn't stick, right? Um it took unpacking and learning, but the reality was I think because it's so innately just a part of who I am that it would have just more crushed my spirit rather than changed something that you can't really change. So,
Right. And I have a following question. Feel free
mhm.
if you're comfortable answering
Sure.
this, but you spoke about acknowledging that you needed to take a break from,
Mhm.
spirituality or faith.
Right.
What did that what did that mean to you? To acknowledge that you needed to take that break, and what have you. Um, and what did that journey entail?
Yeah, I think it was like scary, terrifying in the sense of like who's the person that you call when you get a flat tire or you have an accident and you're in the hospital or you just need some groceries? Probably call family or friends.
Mhm.
I kind of put all my eggs in one basket for a season. So
Yeah.
to leave the church and to come out and to say I'm not doing conversion therapy anymore, which means I can't be in this space anymore, means leaving behind a belief system I had spent a couple years building up and had at the time really invested in and truly believed in. And
Mhm.
now everything was kind of turned on its head of like, I don't think this is what Jesus means by love,
Right.
as best as I can tell. This is confusing for sure, but I don't, this doesn't actually feel like love, or even what you have told me about Christianity or values like this, the actions aren't lining up with what I'm experiencing. So I need to get out of here. But leaving the church meant leaving a spiritual community. It meant potentially leaving behind beliefs. It meant a season of, is this the right decision, and some doubt, and who's going to be there to encourage, like, you've got to figure out this for yourself and what you want to do. So it was tough, and I lived in a conservative, sort of rural state that was very religious, Wyoming. Um, so the signs around me weren't also going to be like, it's all good to be gay. It's okay to be who you are. Like, that wasn't the vibe. And so the leaving was, I think, a particularly important in that process, leaving the state and going to Portland for school, because I needed to be in an environment where I was seeing queer people who were thriving, where there was resources, where there was support to rewrite sort of the template in my mind that said, the world doesn't like who you are. I was like, I know that can't be true, but I'm not going to find that here. So I left, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. I'm just sitting here listening and just taking it all in. I can't in no way compare, your journey, but it takes me back to, my own experience with faith, having being raised in the church,
Sure.
you know, um, but having abusive parents that when church was over, you know, getting knocked out, and stuff
Yeah,
like that. And,
totally.
you know, I remember stepping away, you know,
Mhm.
in an aspect of, I think it's really finding self,
Mhm.
but finding my own way to whatever is,
Mhm.
and that for me was finding my own way back to my own faith and creating that space, and understanding love, you
Yeah,
know, in a different aspect of what was being projected, you
right,
know, and unfortunately, that's stuff that still happens, the
right,
projection, you know,
right.
um, and the misinterpretation. Um, wow. So I want to ask, I'm going to ask a little bit later, but I want to ask, what advice would you give an individual who's going through not getting support,
Mhm.
struggling, with sexuality, identity, in a foster home, in a congregate care group home, or what have you? But also, what advice would you give someone that feels like they can't be themselves and be a part of this foster family because of what they believe?
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's no clear answer, in the sense of, especially for this like tricky situation that everyone's variables are so different. But I think the stuff I go to is, what helped me was identifying a person or a couple persons who were safe people, who weren't as connected to all the other people. So they were spaces I could go to that I started to feel I could trust. I could come out to them, and they weren't going to go follow up with everybody else and say, well, guess what I just found out, and all this stuff. I needed a safe place or places to be who I was and to unpack it, and to feel like people were also encouraging me to say, what's happening isn't right either. So,
Mhm,
like, who is going to help interrupt what could feel like gaslighting
mhm,
reality, right? I needed people to say, like, I know they're doing this, and I know you care about these people, but I don't think that they care about you, at least not at their core, or at your core of who you are. So, finding mentors or friends or other folks who were able to show that they cared and wanted to get to know me as I felt I was. So that was really important. So if there's people around, be it a teacher, a mentor, a coach, whoever it is, if you are able to find that there's at least one adult or someone older than you to support you, I think it's worth trying to build that relationship in the interim of all the other stuff that's not supportive and not working out. I think the other piece is just figuring out whatever you can do in the interim to keep yourself going. So I watched YouTube videos about queer people because I needed to see representation, and I needed something like people who get lost in a book, right? I needed an alternate universe for a while to pass the time until I could make decisions such as moving away. Some of it was to sustain or to just make it by. Um, I'd like to think that while I am resilient, that there's also a resilience is exhausting. That I would like
Mhm.
to have built my resilience not from negative experiences, but from positive protective factors of I'm going to have to navigate the world, but I don't want all my resilience to come from trauma. Um, I want it to come from building tools into my life that help me survive the world. So I think I would, in some of those regards, like to experience that differently and want for other young people to experience. There's no doubt that there's places they can go to find support, that there's resources they can call. So also a shout out to places like the Trevor Project and Trans Lifeline that are hotlines and text lines that you can call and reach out to support folks, that aren't going to call your parents afterwards and say, well, they just called us and said this. It's just a safe place to just call and talk to another human, potentially find even more resources around you. So that's some advice and some resources I would share with folks, sort of navigating some of that.
Definitely, and I just want to before we go to this next part of your chapters of life, I just want to applaud people that are looking to be allies in this area of child welfare, whether it be a mentor, whether it be a foster parent, um, a kinship parent, a respite home, or what have you. I want you to take some time to reflect, and I know leading, a lot of these fostering or adoption is a lot of Christian based organizations, and I'm a Christian myself, I love God, what have you.
Mhm.
Um, but I believe truly and wholeheartedly when Jesus tells us to love our neighbor, that means love our neighbor without judgment, without bias, and it's as simple as that, you know. And I just ask people to take your time to reflect on that before you get into this. If you're not capable, that it's okay to say that I can't do this. Maybe I can help in a different way, but it's more harm that happens to this population of individuals in the LGBTQ plus um, group of
Mhm.
individuals, and the stories are endless. I have more friends than not that tell me, they felt like religion was pushed down their throat, and that's why, you
Mhm.
know, they relationships with peoples or they have this or that and stuff like that, and we don't realize the side effects of what we do and what we project out to people. So I just ask you guys as you listen to this episode today that if you are already or if you're thinking about, take some time to reflect and check yourself, you
Mhm.
know um and if you think that you can, help somebody else, pass that message on, you know because everyone deserves respect
Right.
and honor,
Yeah,
and love.
totally. Absolutely.
So going forward, you talked
Mhm.
about your advocacy journey
Yeah.
starting.
Yeah.
Walk us through that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. They got better, as they say. I moved to Portland. I went to Portland State University. I got a bachelor's degree in women, gender, sexuality, queer studies. I had started in like the medical field path around EMT and respiratory therapy. And while I enjoyed it and was good at it, I wanted something I felt really passionate about. And there was a season, I feel like maybe lots of folks go through this, but at one point I was like, I don't want anything to do with child welfare. I don't want to do it. I've done advocacy, I'm done. And then I've ended up, finding myself being like, no, I think I still want to do something here. I don't know what, but and I know it's not social work in the sense of going to school as a social worker, but I do want to do something around LGBTQ, and I want to do something around youth, and I want to do something around child welfare and just systems not harming people so much. So graduated from PSU, got to work at a nonprofit in Portland called New Avenues for Youth and work as a life skills coach to young people in care, which was just really, really like humbling and gratifying. And I just feel like honored that I got to spend any time in any of their lives. And understood the impact and sort of the weight of the work we were doing in a way that I think my colleagues also understood, but there's just a difference when you've been in it, right?
Mm,
Um, so I enjoyed that, and I felt like I got to really thrive in that environment. I had a supportive home life with a partner. I had a supportive colleague team, and so I was able to go from still at that time identifying as a woman and as a lesbian to transitioning my gender and feeling like I had the support and safety to do that, both in my workplace, in my home life, and my friends and my community. And I think all those things being in place is stuff that young people, especially in care, are sometimes having to make the decision of, do I be myself or do I keep my housing? Young people should be able to do all of that, not having
right.
to pick one or the other. So I waited till adulthood to do that for myself because even though I was still unpacking my gender as an adult, I didn't feel like I had enough stability until I was a little bit older to make the decision, just in case everything else sort of fell away because people still weren't supportive.
Mm,
Fortunately, I had wonderful people in my life to sort of prove me wrong and say, like, I love you as you are, and I'm still going to be here. So I got to experience some healing there in that process. Um, and then I moved on from Portland State and I went to, or I moved on from New Avenues for Youth and I went to Portland State and worked on a youth mental health grant. And I got to work on that project with someone who's near and dear to my heart, who's like a mom figure in my life. So shout out to Emily, um, who I'd met in my prior job, but really helped, both that I got to leave child welfare for a minute and do youth mental health work, but also do it with somebody who was really important in my life and just
mhm,
continue some of that relationship building and also that systems change work. And at the same time as those jobs, I was still doing advocacy work. So I got to work with the back in like 2014, I was doing an internship at the National Resource Center before the Center for States sort of different aspects existed. And I got to do an internship there. And then when the Center for States began, I got to be a young adult consultant. And so for about 7 years, I did work as a national youth consultant, helping child welfare, state systems, and federally sort of try and help folks understand how to better serve young people, how to engage lived experience, and how to think about this work differently. And that I just didn't realize at the time. I thought I was partially like along for the ride, how much it was gonna bring me to all these different people I needed to know and would give me the family and the love and the knowledge and mentorship that I needed. Because it wasn't really planned. It was just like, I'm just gonna keep doing this until it seems like I shouldn't anymore. And that has led me to like a really amazing opportunities, but I think also understanding like what my purpose might be and what and how um, when you can align like getting paid to do what you care about and what you're good at. And there's like one other, and I think it's there's a phrase called like ikigaya. I think it's a Japanese word of like when all those things come together and you get to do that as your work, like how powerful that is. And you don't always get to do that. And so I feel very grateful, even when I feel tired or burnt out or it's hard, that there's also a lot of other things I could be doing that I could like absolutely hate or feel like it's not actually helping others. So that really keeps driving me. Um, so I'm still connected to the Center for States. I work at ICF. I have a job there as a youth development subject matter expert, and I've been working on this really cool project with a lot of colleagues called the Division X Technical Assistance Project. We're wrapping up, and with that, it's been 90% people with lived experience working on this project, and young people under the age of 30 and really showing that people with lived experience can do a lot of really cool work. And I think it was just as much of a heavy lift as it was an empowering experience, probably for all of us. Kind of in the process, I was thinking 30 years from now, a lot of these folks that I'm working with are going to be doing really cool stuff. They don't have to be, but I can't imagine they won't be, right? And to see sort of the future in like a second, like, oh, this is really cool. Like we might actually be able to like change the future. So my advocacy work has taken me there. And then outside of ICF and the Center for States, I've been able to start my own consulting firm called Unicorn Solutions, which is really focused on utilizing lived experience in ways that impact hopefully better futures for youth in foster care, youth impacted by systems, and LGBTQ youth. And really that's looked like speaking engagements, so doing some keynotes, setting up workshops or trainings. So for me, I want to create an experience for people to think about things differently, and to leave hopefully ready to do some things differently. I don't need you to agree with everything I have to say, but I do want you to at least leave thinking about things you maybe weren't considering before and hopefully headed down the path. Because a 1 hour workshop's not going to fix everybody, but it might start you down the path to have some conversations and to keep working on it. Um, and then I've gotten to do things like partnering with Lambda Legal on LGBTQ efforts and partnering with my peers who also have lived experience in care but are also queer on the Exchange for Change, which is trying to help folks with lots of money figure out how they could better target their funds beyond pride parades, which is great. But how do I help people in rural communities who are queer get the care that they need? I need corporations to also fund that too and not forget about them. So getting to do that with my peers was super powerful. And I've gotten to work on Youth Thrive for Youth with the Center for Study of Social Policy, being a trainer, being an advisor to that work, and just helping other folks better understand how do we help young people thrive, and feeling like that has also had a really cool impact in some of the services young people receive just by meeting the people who are behind all of that. Um, gotten to write cool papers with people and just have experiences that like were not what I was expecting when I was 15 and at home and entering care. I was just trying to survive. And now I'm getting to do both cool opportunities, but I'm having these interactions happen more and more lately where youth and families reach out to me for advice, or they reach out to say, we're struggling and can you help us? And where people are reaching out to say, I've learned a lot from you, vicariously or otherwise, just by following your social media or coming to your events. And that has been like super gratifying and sort of validating of like, I'm on the right path. I have not defined what the path is, but whatever I'm doing is working enough that it's helping people. And that's what I care about. And so knowing that people are listening also sort of drives me to know like there's also like a responsibility that comes with that, right? I want to give people correct information. I want to honor the fact that they're willing to ask for help in vulnerable times. Um, I want to not shame people who don't have it right but are asking for help to get it right.
Mm.
Um, I could say that I hear plenty of nonsense in workshops, and my job is to understand that like I'm just glad they're willing to say whatever problematic thing they're thinking so we can figure out how to make it right. That's the space I want to operate in versus sometimes on social media right now, right? Somebody says something wrong and they're canceled and they're roasted
Yes.
alive, right? And that's great, but what do we do when we cancel everybody? What are we left with? And
Right.
so we can't do much work if we cancel everybody. So I'm really invested in culture change and helping people understand that there's so much that we can do and that it is our responsibility to like work with young people, especially to make the world better for them, because we can, but not if we're not willing to try, if we're not willing to have hard conversations, if we're not willing to listen, and if we're not willing to change ourselves. The quote of this episode, like we would be misleading ourselves to think that we're going to change the world if we can't change ourselves, if we're not willing to. Um, so that's sort of a space I reside in the work that I do now, wherever I'm working at. Um, those are the things that are really important to me.
Wow. It, you know, few, not well, almost a year now. I can't even say a few months. Almost a year now was in a space of reflection,
Mhm.
trying to understand purpose, understand if the work that I'm doing is worth it, trying to
Sure.
understand if, just like you were saying, giving, people asking for help,
Yeah.
am I doing it right?
Right.
And you know, I'm here, so obviously,
You're on the right path.
yes, obviously, some things I got some answers in that space of reflection. But I commend you for this journey you have embarked on. You know, you uplifted which I think most advocates, most people with lived experience, most people in these fields that are massive
Mhm.
have that. Yeah, I think I'm done. I think
Sure.
I'm good. I get it.
Fair.
I'm doing some stuff. What else,
I'm tired.
Right, right, right. I can even speak like college for me has been a tremendous journey. And most people know I've dropped out of college.
Mhm.
I started out criminal justice, social work. I have several different certificates and things that I don't even use today.
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know, um, but it's all been life experience
Mhm.
for a greater purpose. And for me, I like to think I found what my purpose is. It's ever growing and ever evolving, you know. But similar to what you said, is creating spaces for change,
Mhm.
you know, but also giving opportunity to challenge those narratives,
Mhm.
you know. Um, and I also hear, too many times we have those people who would just have narrow aspects, of things, narrow minds, and
Right.
they come to these conferences, they come to these sessions, and they actually really want feedback. They want
Yeah.
to know, like,
Yeah.
or want reassurance that what they were saying was right,
Right.
and too many times I've seen people just shut down like that, and I'm like, I'm not for that.
Mhm.
I'm not for the cancel culture. I'm just gonna compete. Some people gonna get
Yeah.
mad.
Yeah.
Y'all gonna get
Fair.
mad. I don't care. I'm just not for it because once upon a time, not long ago, I was committing crimes. I was
Mhm.
out there in the streets. I was
Mhm.
doing some things I wasn't supposed to.
Sure.
As a product, it was a product of my abuse and my trauma, but I
Mhm.
was still once upon a time someone that a judge called a menace to society, a delinquent, and what have you. I had that narrow mind, that aspect,
Mhm.
So even though I'm not in the same shoes as maybe a foster parent that's think this right to persecute a individual for their sexual beliefs or what have you, it's
Mhm.
always an opportunity to teach someone, and we should
Right.
never shun anyone away.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I love that mindset that you
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
with that, because that's something that I do so choose myself to just create a space for everyone to learn, everyone to grow, because that's
Yeah.
what we all are doing. you know you
Well,
uplift. Go ahead. Yeah.
you said something there too though that makes me think about like how powerful words are. I talk about this sometime. So like the words that were used for you in court, right, would also potentially tell you who you are when you're not. What are the
Mhm.
words that we use for young people that we don't always think as intentionally about, but can cause a lot of harm too, instead of using the words for who people are capable of being or who they really are when we take the time to not just see them as the behaviors that they've had, right?
Right.
For me, words are really powerful around how I define myself and situate myself in the world to help
Mhm.
people understand me. The words I want to use for other young people or other people in general, I hope bring positive regard, right? Unconditional positive regard for the fact that like I don't need to know and understand all of you, but how I talk about you is important because you're a human that deserves respect also. I talk about words sometimes being important because an experience I've had, and I've heard it also from my peers so many times that I keep using it as hopefully this point will come across someday is sometimes you can say something in a moment and not realize that it sticks with someone for the rest of their life. So that
Mhm.
small comment you made that seemed like I don't even remember saying it might be the thing that has pivotively changed my trajectory, stopped me from going at my dreams, making me think you think something of me that maybe you don't. Um, I had a person in my life I was watching Grey's Anatomy with, the foster parent, and the first time in the series where Callie and Torres have a kiss and it's a lesbian kiss, and I'm 16, 17, I don't know, sitting on the couch watching this with my foster parent, and the response that they have is ew. And internally, in that literally in that one word, that sound, I said to myself, like, oh, I can't come out to this person. I can't tell them who I am. They think gay people are disgusting. They don't realize I'm gay. They must think that I'm disgusting. I can't come out, right? I don't
Mhm.
even know if they remember saying that sound out loud to that show in that moment, but I heard it and it stuck. And the other moments when adults said things about me and used words that might make someone think one thing or the other, but also can really last with young people, especially because they're young. So I bring this up just to sort of highlight, if you're listening now, to really be intentional with the words that you use and the way you talk to people, young people or otherwise. Because every single time that we have an interaction with another human is an opportunity to lift someone up that we didn't know was down, or to prevent them from walking away thinking something that's just not true. And so, whatever judges or lawyers or whoever said about you, I also know is not true about you, Michael, right? These are the
Right.
words people grabbed on, but that's not who Michael is. Um, Maybe a projection of what they thought, but it's not who you are. And
Mhm.
so, um, I just want to lift that up because I think it's really important for people to understand how much power our words have, even in our friendships, right? Be intentional with our words and how we talk about each other.
Definitely. And I feel it's important. I want to share this story in my
Mhm,
journey, and I hope everyone accept this for what it is.
mhm,
Um, I, didn't openly speak about my sexual abuse
mhm.
for not I don't not any of my experience in care like that.
Sure.
It was brought up a couple times, but it wasn't really. It kind of was like, oh, we gonna just hurry up and get past it.
Right.
But openly speaking about it in a place of healing didn't happen into my adulthood, but some healing happened
Mhm,
in my time in care. And when I say that, because I had been sexually abused by a male and female,
mhm,
I was very confused, went
mhm,
through internal battle with self and identity, but also before being in the system, I had an absent father that was present in the beginning, but then became absent. I didn't see a lot of positive male role models, and I was mostly raised by female,
mhm,
and that gave me a different sense of being an individual male.
mhm.
I remember being bullied because I was a little bit more sensitive. You know,
There's nothing wrong with that.
right. I remember people, because I had friends that were more girls, and I had guy friends too, but friends that were, gay or what have you, being projected that you're gay, you're this, and all this other stuff. But um, I seek refuge
Mhm.
in the outcast because
Yeah,
internally, I felt safe,
yeah.
and I didn't realize until I was in a placement, and I don't know where this individual is in life now, but hopefully, if he hears this story, he know how much he changed my life.
Mm,
Um, I was in a residential placement while on the juvenile side of things, and at this time, I was still trying to uncover faith for myself.
mhm,
Faith had been so miscued. The persecutions of people who
mhm.
were LGBT community, the persecution of self. You know,
Yeah,
because that was what I was taught, but also I was being abused. So I'm like, am I gay? And what
yeah,
am I? And all this
sure.
other stuff. Because of the sexual abuse, and I became what you would call like a positive peer, like
Mhm,
like a top dog or what have you in
mhm,
this placement over time, and they start to put people in my room that they knew that I can keep safe.
mhm,
And I had one roommate, he ended up um, getting out of the place, and then the next roommate I had was openly gay,
mhm.
um, and was unapologetic about it.
Yeah.
And I just, me and him clicked. I think one of my first friendships within true friendships that I identified and understood with him. And he, talked to me about his journey, and how he got here. And we are juveniles, so we all did something to end up here with the
Sure.
courts. And we just had a lot of moments just laughing. But I remember there was an aspect I had court ordered visitations because at the time I was still working to see if family was a formidable option.
Mm.
Um, and I had gone on visits, and I would come back and he would tell me, people were messing with him and all this other stuff. And I was like, I got your back, I'll make sure they don't mess with you or what have you.
Mhm.
And there was some stuff that he was leaving out about them messing with him.
Mhm.
And one point he came to me and told me that they tried to sexually assault him,
Mhm.
um, when they were there. And I remember telling him, I'm not gonna let no one hurt you. At this point, I had became bigger. I used to get
Mhm.
pushed around and all this other stuff. So in my head, I kind of developed like, I'm a protector, and it hurt me because I didn't protect myself, when I could. It was
Sure.
all these different mental thoughts and stuff like that. That now I just know,
Mhm.
I was a child.
Mhm.
But in that moment, I'm like, I'm not gonna let nobody hurt you. So scheduled to go to another visitation, and um, something happened where there was a snowstorm, and they said, "Well, we're gonna just take you tomorrow. This is Friday. Then we're gonna take you tomorrow." No one else knew that I actually stayed over. Um, Guy came into the room. I guess he thought I was gone. And long story short, the situation was averted.
Right.
Not gonna criminally say anything against myself. But long story short, that young man taught me how to be comfortable with myself,
Sure.
how to be open with myself,
Mhm.
and to start that journey of healing. And I
Right.
don't know where I would be faith wise or even understanding myself and my identity if it wasn't for him.
Sure.
Um, so I say that because I am a person of faith,
Mhm.
and I am a person of, a religious background of people who consistently persecute people of the LGBTQ community.
Mhm.
And only thing I can tell you guys is that it's a lot of growth and maturity that needs to happen.
Mhm.
You don't know. You don't know the battles, you don't know the journey, and who are you
Right.
to condemn that next person,
Right.
that could be the next person that loves you,
Mhm.
and I just hope, that young man out there, today is living a fully, loving and nurturing and holistic life, because
Yeah.
he's done something that saved me.
Right.
But I wanted to share that because, you know, um, it was very significant, what you uplifted about change and narratives, because of my background, um, those narratives were projected onto me. And I didn't know how skewed my mindset was against myself, let alone other people.
Mhm.
Um, because I was a child, and um, best way I can give an example for this is we think about children who grew up in racism.
Mhm.
You know, um, hopefully they wasn't racist, but if you hear somebody calling it, you hear your father calling another person the N word, you're going to mimic who you role model.
Mhm.
You know, so I say that story, in hopes that it helps somebody else out there,
Sure.
understand self and do some reflection, you
Mhm.
know. And I also, just want to project that, everyone deserves love, everyone
Mhm.
deserves nurturing, and everyone deserves respect. You
Yeah.
know, I also want to transition and uplift. You spoke about some of the advocacy that you've done.
Mhm.
If you can uplift three things that are in the works of advocacy, or three things that you think of that could be worked on to, say, for instance, there's a legislator listening to this. There's someone, what would you pass on to those individuals?
Well, I know that there is a just kind of unprecedented onslaught of anti-LGBTQ bills happening in the US right now and last year. And I think a number I saw was like 300 plus or something, just bills about myself and my community and people trying to create laws to make our lives harder or to make our lives illegal or to bring harm too. I mean, it should be noted that the attacks against reproductive rights are very closely tied to the rights of LGBTQ people, and that all of our rights are really all tied together. The whole none of us are free until all of us are free is very true. And so I think um, people who are using legislation as an avenue to control other people may not realize that they are harming others, and even I would go as far as to say at times killing other people, be it because of the violence and hate that they're enabling others to experience more and more of, or the ways that they're making folks think maybe I shouldn't be here anymore because people don't want me here because of the laws that are being created to outlaw my existence or to make it harder to get the care that I need. So I think that to dismiss some things as just politics is really ridiculous and harmful and cruel. And so I think if you have any sway or ability to understand that and to do anything about it, that there's never been a better time to do something about it. Um, I think there is a need for people who can at least temporarily care for LGBTQ young people, ideally not in the system. The goal for me is not that young people are in the system, but they're with their families or at least with people who care for them in community. And there's constantly a dearth of affirming foster parents who can support and really competently care for LGBTQ young people. So if you think that might be you, now is a great time. And I think the other would probably just be making sure that young people in your life, LGBTQ or not, should stick around, that it's worth sticking around, that life is hard and can be painful, um, but that the answer really isn't to take your own life. Um, there's so many other alternatives, I think, before that. And so if you're able to help a young person understand that and let them know that you're crazy about them and that you love them and that everything about them is good, um, that is some huge work and something most of us could go, right now and go tell a young person and make sure they know just, hey, I just want you to know that like, A, if you ever need anything, call me. And B, you're great. I don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. You're awesome. Um, because I don't know if people realize that sometimes young people are walking around thinking no one cares about me and I don't know why I should be here, even when they seem fine. So that's some of the advocacy stuff that comes to mind for me.
Definitely. A lot was uplifted today in this conversation, and um, I just, want to open a space for you. If there's anything else you would like to leave here before my next two questions, anything else you feel that is important about yourself or about what you advocate against, advocate for,
Mhm.
feel free. I just want to give you this space.
Um, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think at this point, it's just um, finding ways to support the work of myself and other folks doing this work. It's always important. There's both the financial support is one thing, but emotional support, the companionship and the collaboration and the solidarity that comes along with work as it gets harder can really keep people going. Um, so I think this is a great segue to reach out to me, unicornsolutions.org. You can find me there. You can send me a note if you want me to come do a training. Happy to come speak, even if it's just to have a conversation and advise and talk through a challenge, be it in a family or an organization. That's the stuff I like to do and I like to help with. And I may not be able to solve the problem, but I love getting creative about it and trying to connect you then to someone who can help you with that. So those are the things that I enjoy doing and help support me in this work to try and help support other folks. So I will take all the help I can get and also do my best to try and support the need as it comes up.
Definitely. It's been such an honor and a privilege to see you again.
Yeah.
Even though I know you guys can't see. But
Thanks for the invite.
to see you again, but also to be honored with your story um and your expertise. I can't thank you enough for being vulnerable, for being open, and not only for myself, as a things that I've learned and things that I'm going to take away from this conversation and to reflect on, but also I can imagine for those listening what they're going to take away from this and what they're going to reflect on and the conversations that are going to come or be brought up.
Mhm.
So thank you, for joining me and being here. um you kind of answered my last my last couple questions there all together. um but I look forward to continuing to work with you and collab with you in the future if opportunity presents itself.
Yeah.
um you guys know my spiel as we get ready to end. I believe this is um give me 1 second. I'm gonna tell y'all. Yeah. Uh because I am not gonna be bad at this. It's gotta be episode 8. I'm saying 8. I'm going with that. If I'm wrong, y'all can, talk about me later. um yes, I believe it's episode 8, but this is, great work. I've been reassured that this is a place that's needed. And as long as this place is needed and wanted, to
Mhm.
uplift voices and to have these conversations, I will be here. You
Yeah.
know, um, so thank you guys for your continued support, for you guys listening, and carrying this message on.
Yeah.
It's such a privilege to be able to be here and to do this work. But I know this work goes beyond just one individual, so thank you. Um, Lastly, COVID's out there, monkeypox, the flu, the cold, it's all out there, so be safe,
Mhm.
please be safe. As we get into these winter months, those that are not in like California, Florida, Mexico, and, other states that don't really have 4 seasons like that, you know, please stay safe. Wear your mask if need be. Just take the right and proper precautions to protect this one big village that we call, America or what have you. You know, so just do your duty and sanitize, wash your hands, wear your mask. If you're feeling sick, just take your precautions. Other than that, I know there's been a lot of things mentioned in this episode that could be potentially triggering to some. So please, as you have listened to this episode, take some time. Do some mindfulness exercise, debrief. Mental health is important. So although I love you guys listening in, I want you guys to be safe and sound. So take that time, but also if some things in this episode have uplifted and brought up some things, there are resources out there, so I challenge you to take that next step to get help, to get someone to talk to if you don't, you know, you heard it, Unicorn Solutions, and my email is also open as well. So, you have two individuals here open and ready to receive whatever you have, so
Mhm.
please don't take that lightly. Um, Outside of that, it's been a pleasure being able to bring this episode to you guys today. So thank you. And I hope that you have a good morning, good night, good whenever you're listening to this. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you.